The St. Johns are among the most depraved figures in The Walking Dead. Though they appear in only a single episode, their impact and true purpose are often overlooked. From Brenda, Andy and Danny to the eerie disappearance of the farm's workers, this video explores one of the darkest and most disturbing families in gaming history. Without further ado, let's jump right in. To understand the St. Johns and what shaped them, we first need to look at their so-called head of the table, Brenda. She took control of the farm after her husband Terry was killed. While the game never confirms how he died, cut content suggests a stray walker broke into the house, likely why the family now keeps their property so heavily fortified with electric fences. Unlike the rest of his family, Terry is believed to have never engaged in anything evil. It's far more likely that his death and the resulting scarcity of resources are what truly shaped the monsters Lee eventually faced. With her husband gone, Brenda faced the challenge of caring for Danny and Andy. The game hints that the workers had simply gone missing or left to rejoin their families, but this isn't the whole truth. Bloodstains and sealed off rooms suggest those workers met a far grimmer fate, becoming victims of the very slaughterhouse they once helped maintain. Everyone knows the St. Johns are cannibals, but uncovering what happened to those workers and the tragic event they used to justify it is even more disturbing. Cannibalism and murder justified by the only people around you likely had stark effects on the mentality of the family. Danny is a truly depraved example, a creepy, sly and often aloof man who doesn't react much to violence. His confrontation with Jolene and her cold-blooded murder are all facts that contribute to the fact he's likely the worst of the family. Alongside his brother Andy, the smooth-talking negotiator, Danny lures survivors to the farm with promises of food. But once inside, the St. Johns kill them and trade their meat in a desperate effort to keep the bandits at bay. Many people overlook a key fact about the St. Johns. They don't just kill to eat humans, they kill to keep their farm safe from bandit raids. That adds even more weight to the moral grey area surrounding them. Brenda and Andy occasionally reveal flashes of humanity, framing their horrific acts as mere survival. They're the skilled manipulators, the ones who lower your guard. Danny, on the other hand, is a cold-blooded murderer who shows no interest in justification or conversation. He takes pleasure in harming others, and even grins when Lee is given the choice to kill him. For Danny, this is exactly how the world should be, and if you behave even remotely like him, you're playing right into his sick, twisted game. Manipulation, murder, cannibalism, and even a literal human slaughterhouse. That's the St. Johns in a single horrifying snapshot. But why are they in the story in the first place? What weight do they truly add in episode 2? Well, it's quite a simple equation when you begin adding things up. For Clementine, it's a harsh lesson. Even people who seem kind, offering food with a friendly smile, can be monsters at heart, driven only by their own survival. Lee leading her into the dairy proves that even the adults she trusts can make dangerous mistakes, and when chaos erupts, they may not be able to protect her. If that sounds familiar, it should. The dynamic mirrors the stranger, but with one crucial difference. We always know who the St. Johns are. They're the threat in plain sight, unlike the stranger who remains hidden until it's too late. One hides their intentions, the other their identity. One lures you in, the other follows in the shadows. Episode 2 is where I believe the developers recognized that true threats had to be tangible, that Clementine had to learn she could die even when surrounded by seemingly kind people. For Lee, however, the parallel is even more striking. Brenda, once supported by a team of workers, is now the sole carer of her 2 sons, mirroring Lee's own situation as the lone guardian of Clementine, while being steadily pushed into a leadership role. The question becomes, if push came to shove, how far would you go? How depraved would you become to keep this little girl alive? The game never asks you to accept cannibalism, but it does show how far people will go to protect their families. And then it quietly tests you with a different moral choice, stealing from an abandoned car. You're not killing anyone outright, but if you take the supplies, you're effectively dooming the stranger's family, leaving them to die. The message is simple. You can kill in more ways than one. In the apocalypse, right and wrong aren't just subjective, they're practically non-existent. Many would argue that Brenda did what an unsettling number of people might do if forced to watch their sons, daughters, fathers, or brothers starve. Episode 2's final question is this: if you're not willing to abandon your own sense of morality to protect this little girl, can you truly claim to be any better when she winds up dead? Now we know exactly who the St. Johns are and why they matter in episode 2. The next question cuts deeper. How did their presence scar Clementine's journey and reshape her story forever? You've defeated the St. Johns and either stolen the car supplies or left them behind. Now those choices, or the lack of them, will ripple through the story in ways you may not yet see. Your group is starving, and so is Clementine. Do you feed your favourites or try to keep everyone alive? When supplies dwindle and an unknown traitor begins giving them away, how do you respond? Who deserves to stay when rations run thin? And should those who contribute the least be left to starve? You may not realise it yet, but episode 3 quite literally puts you in Brenda's shoes. Bandits soon arrive at your doorstep once they discover the dairy is no longer operational. You've clung to your group and your morals. You've fed your so-called workers. Yet, because of those very choices, 10-year-old Duck is bitten, Carly or Doug is shot, and Lily is cast out. The fallout is devastating. Katja takes her own life, and Kenny is left shattered. In barely 20 minutes, your entire group implodes. Played back to back as originally written, the consequences of rejecting any moral compromise become unmistakable. Standing in the same position Brenda once occupied, you watch people you love murdered or left to die, their bodies destined to feed the walkers. When Brenda says,
"Now you got monsters roaming around that do nothing but eat people. And for what? To continue to rot till they eat some more."
It reads like a grim prophecy of what the so-called path of morality really leads to. Episode 3 is the clearest example of the St. John's lasting effect on the story, and of the game's challenge to the idea of objective morality. Yet, it doesn't stop there. Do you shoot an innocent woman to put her out of her misery, or let her suffer to buy extra time to scavenge? Kenny chooses to let her suffer. Later, you face the choice of whether to let Ben die for being a burden, a decision that continues the same moral test. Just because you're not eating him doesn't mean you're not sacrificing him to protect those you value more. Perhaps to secure a place for your loved ones on the boat Kenny keeps talking about. Some would argue that letting Ben die is even worse, because while the St. John's killed for immediate survival, you're doing it for something that isn't even certain. Funnily enough, it's your own decisions that make Vernon, and by extension the stranger, want to take Clementine away from you. No matter how far you've come in adapting to survival, someone else will always feel more insulated or morally superior, and they'll look down on the people forced to make the toughest calls. At the start of the game, you only know as much as Lee. You're adapting to the new world right alongside him. By the end, you're the one making bitter, sometimes even cruel decisions. Choices you'll still find ways to justify. It begs the question, were the St. John's truly evil, or simply ahead of the curve? By the time you reach Crawford, even that community is sacrificing children just to survive. Do you hate the St. John's more for what they did, or because they nearly did it to you and Clementine? Whatever your answer, episode 2's purpose is clear: to harden you, to show that difficult choices are inevitable. Had this story unfolded later in the season, it might have faded into the background, because by then you would have seen and perhaps committed far greater evils yourself. But placed early, it becomes a lesson that in a broken world, there are no rules, that most people will protect only those they love, and most of all, a lesson for Clementine. The threats she faces can never be overcome by relying on others. This video wouldn't have been possible without my incredible members: Gog, Wizard Elf, Eternal Canadian, Ross Moe, Beatbox Blade, Donnie, Poop and Sock, Fresh Pokemon Hunter, Thy Oasis, Skull Skills 777, Alexander Brantley, Chesburger, Jojo My Dojo, and MC DNHMR. And to everyone who's made it this far, thank you so much for the support. I genuinely couldn't do this without you. Here's to 14,000 subscribers. Thank you.